Alright, so we've got the Fender Deluxe Reverb 60s back in the shop again today for my friend. So this unfortunately took a fall out of the back of a vehicle while being loaded in and out for a show, and it was missing this back half. I like to call it the Batman piece because it kind of looks like Batman's mask. But anyway, it was missing the wood piece right here because these holes are stripped out. And so when it fell back on the tubes. Actually, all of the tubes broke off their locating pins here for the rectifier and both the power tubes, and they both came out. Owner said he'd put the tubes back in place, but it turned on and nothing was happening. So what I'm assuming happened is, since it was missing the locating pins here, he might not have put these in correctly, which can end up causing some issues by having the wrong pins plugged into the wrong sockets. That's why those locating pins are on there. Or maybe one of these tubes is also dead. So I'm looking at them right now, and the silk screen isn't matching up on these, which isn't always a sign that they're not plugged in the same. Sometimes there's a little discrepancy in the printing, but it looks like maybe these aren't put in the same way. So we're just going to go ahead and drop the chassis out, do some testing on these tubes, and talk to the owner and see if he wants these replaced out. And we're going to just check it and make sure there's no other damage that might have occurred. So we're going to take a quick look now at the inside of the Deluxe Reverb chassis. You can see we have the original coupling capacitors there, but it looks like almost every resistor has been changed out, and cathode bypass caps have been changed, some orange drops, different orange drop in the tremolo, circuitry. Let's look here at the pots now. We've got a new replacement switchcraft in there and grid leak resistor. New screen resistors, as well as some 1 ohm resistors for biasing. Original bias diode there, but changed out the capacitor to a Sprague. And the front panel here has been bent up a little bit. Let's take a look at the back panel. Looks to be original switches. Alright, let's dive into it. Okay, so I have the chassis removed and on the bench now, and it's a good thing that we did go ahead and take a look at this, because over here in the corner of the chassis, this was rattling around. This is one of the locating pins for the tubes. Let me grab the rectifier. Here's the GZ34 that had fallen out of the unit, and as you can see, it's missing this locating pin, which has the indexing. Let's see if I can get a shot of this. It has that keyway so that you can put it into the tube sockets in the correct orientation, and so that's snapped off. So it's a good thing we got that out of here so it wasn't rattling around in the back of the amp. Alright, so I called the owner to talk to him about what was going on with the amp and explained to him about the locating pins being broken off of the rectifier tubes and the power tubes, and kind of just wanted to assess how he wanted this repaired, if he wanted me to go through and replace some things like the diodes and other things that I would typically recommend on a checkup in here, but he's wanting to do this job as cheaply as possible, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I explained to him that they make these sleeves in case the locating pins get knocked off of tubes like this, and you can reference off of a known good tube. So this is a functioning brand new GZ34, and so as long as you reference off of that, you can slide one of these on here, taking note of the orientation of the locating pin, and put it on here and basically have a good tube. So I went ahead and threw this as well as both of the 6v6s that are installed in the amp on my 177 tube tester just to make sure that everything was good, there were no shorts and nothing microphonic that was happening, and everything tests out just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and throw them back here in the amp and do a quick bias check and probably call it a day. Okay, so I've installed both of the power tubes as well as the rectifier tube, and I have my Eurotubes bias probe hooked up here. I've got the Variac dialed up to 120 volts exactly. I've already run this test once before with a light bulb current limiter plugged into it, but now I'm going to go ahead and hook up a speaker load to it and check the bias. So let's see where we're at here. Give it a chance for things to warm up. Alright, so I've let the amp warm up and settle into a good operating point here, and as you can see, we've got about 445 volts on the plates of the output tubes and 17 milliamps of current flowing through it, which equates to about 7 watts of plate dissipation, which is what it's showing right here. The recommended plate dissipation for a 6v6 I'll go ahead and throw up on the screen right here. And so we're looking to get it somewhere around 70% is the max that I kind of like to run these at, and I've worked with this particular customer before in the past and he likes to run his amps a little bit colder, so this is just fine. This is going to be totally fine. One thing I did notice, however, when I was installing the tubes is that the sockets are really loose, so I think I'm going to retension those, clean the pots and switches, and go ahead and throw everything back in here and call it good. Okay, so upon closer inspection, I got to thinking about the plate voltages I was seeing on the tube while biasing it, and it was getting close to 450 volts, which is the maximum plate voltage allowed on a JJ6v6 according to the datasheet. So I knew something was off, and I actually found that one of the two tubes, despite testing fine on my tube tester, had ended up stopping. It stopped conducting properly, and so I was getting like this really bad distortion sound, and then it was artificially increasing the plate voltage on the tube that was functioning. So unfortunately, I ended up having to swap out the tubes. This is one of those instances where, you know, I would have loved to go through the amp and completely restore it and change some things, but every once in a while, you know, you get jobs where people are just wanting to get it up and going and back on the road, and so this was one of those, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. But unfortunately, customer's going to have to get a new set of tubes, but in my personal opinion, after I threw them in there, it sounds so much better now. I mean, it opened it up, and I love this amp. So let's listen to a little bit. I'm just going to play through it for about a minute or so, and then we're going to call this good, get it shipped back to them. Thanks for watching. Bye.